Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Joining me actually is filmmaker and
Oh, good. That's all you need for my intro.
joining me today is filmmaker and journalist Chandra Traxler.
Hey, what's up? My name's Chandra. I am a filmmaker and journalist out of Missouri. I specify in all things kind of creepy and horrific, so yeah.
Our video today will be about the film Color Out of Space, and it's adapted from a short story by H.P. Lovecraft. Chandra, do you want to tell us about the short story?
Yeah, so Color Out of Space was a short story released within a collection by H.P. Lovecraft in 1927, and it, similar to the film, follows the downfall of the Gardner family after a meteoroid hits their farm.
Interesting, and then that brings us to today's movie. In 2019, director Richard Stanley gave us The Color Out of Space, starring Nicolas Cage, and he also wrote it alongside Scarlett Amaris, I presume is her name. Now, this is kind of Richard Stanley's, I want to say, comeback movie. This is the first feature film that he's directed since his falling out in the 90s with the terrible movie The Island of Dr. Moreau, if I'm saying that correctly. And sadly, this one didn't do that well for Richard Stanley as well, since The Color Out of Space is a 12 million budget movie, and it barely, I don't think it even made $1 million. So,
Oof.
but let's talk about things they did well. First off, definitely is the practical effects.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was my favorite part of the entire film, was the use of their practical effects. There was a few moments within the film that actually made me jump. One of them being like when the mom chops off her fingers. It was so sudden and it was so gross, and the blood that spurts out was so well done. You also have like the morph between the mother and the son. That was so disgusting to look at. I had to stop the film and just sit there and look at how horrific this beast was. And for me, I could definitely tell that they put a lot of love and care into trying to create this creature as horribly as possible. I think that they did a lot in the sense of wanting to create something that would cause a reaction. Because as common in Lovecraft films, you have these horror aspects that aren't fully talked about. So you kind of have to look at ways of making them come to life in a way that's more realistic. Because you see it in the book where they don't specifically talk about what happens to the mother. It's always this too horrible to think about, too horrible to talk about type of reaction. So I think Stanley did a really solid job of finding a way to make her look as horrifying as you imagine her being in the book, because they never specifically state. You also have the images of Lavinia when she carves these sigils into her skin and she slices her skin open, that I still have horror thoughts of to this day because of how gross it was and how realistic it was. So I think that's one of the major things that I think the film did very, very well, because it's something that you don't often get in Lovecraft films.
That is definitely true, and not only is it a little bit grotesque to look at, but oddly enough, visually, the visual effects in this film, it's beautiful. I mean, with the big climactic ending scene where everything's going to hell, everything is covered in this beautiful purpley pink color scheme that is just like, throughout the movie you'll get like little hints of it, like little purple flowers, the pink media and everything through that, and then it just all builds up to this beautiful color scheme of an ending while everything's going to hell, but it's oddly enough beautiful, and the visual effects in it as well. There's moments where characters move sort of through time, and so they have blurring effects on them, and it's just, honestly, it was satisfying to look at despite everything that was kind of going on. This movie, it kind of stayed weird for Lovecraft.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's what I really loved about this film, is because it is a Lovecraft film, you expect it to be weird. You know that Lovecraft is this master of surreal and cosmic horror, so you expect his films to be weird, but they can be often very, very hard to adapt and bring to the screen because he's very good at leaving things up to the imagination. So as this film went on and things started to build, you could definitely feel it because you could see it. So like with the colors slowly building over the course of the film, or the horrible morphing of the llamas or the mother, it left a lot to the imagination of how bad things could get, but stayed true to the Lovecraftian feeling, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, they definitely did not hold back, which I appreciate. But that is sadly all of the things they did well. We do have to talk about things they could have done better. The first thing for me was the dialogue. I feel like the dialogue was super blocky and super awkward. There were moments when characters would be talking and I would just think to myself, no normal human being would talk like this or say this stuff. And there are also unnecessary details in this movie. There are a lot of things that go unresolved or honestly feel unnecessary. We start out by finding out the mother had cancer, and that was it. For the first half of the movie it was a big deal, and then for the second half it didn't matter at all. And like Nicolas Cage's character, how he despises his dad and how he did not want to turn out like him, and then he turned out like them. These are details and they kinda add to the person and their personalities. It's kinda, there's no resolution to it and it feels unnecessary in the larger scheme of things, and the pacing did not help as well.
Yeah, I will agree with the fact that the pacing was very, very slow in the beginning. It helped to build up all of the weirdness that was going on, but for me it was a little bit too slow, and with the unnecessary details, it felt really awkward. I think that's one of the biggest differences between the book and the movie, was just kind of story structure and how things were laid out. Because in the book you have everything told in retrospect from the Ward Phillips character who goes and talks to Ezra. In the book its name's Amy, where you're supposed to be hearing everything back as he's told like 20 years later. There was a lot of moments within the film that I felt like they could have gone a lot quicker or talked about some of the details a bit more, like with the mom and her breast cancer, the dad and his hatred for his father. But overall, I think like there's just a lot of differences between how they could have laid it out and what they did. This film was also updated, so the original text was supposed to be set in the 80s, whereas Stanley definitely made it more modern, as you see with the mom and her AirPods. So I think it's interesting in the way that he decided to make things feel very slow in the beginning just so it could hit a lot harder at the end, I feel like.
Yeah, that is true, but still the characters are still pretty wonky. The characters, I feel like, is why we despise a slow start, is because it's characters you don't want to spend a lot of time with. I mean, I'm a good Nicolas Cage fan as much as the next person that enjoys memes, but I feel like Nicolas Cage in this movie, his dramatic scenes were really good. The moments when he had to shoot his llamas, the moments where he had to shoot his wife, they were dramatic and they were sad. But then he also has moments where he goes mad and weird, and for some reason when he mentions his dad and does his dad's voice, he does what sounds like his best Trump impression. And I for the life of me, I can't figure out why he's doing this voice, why he's sticking to this character of his dad, and why he should sound like Trump.
Yeah, I feel like this film's a good one for people that like the classic Nicolas Cage outburst that I feel like you get in every single one of his movies, like when he's pounding on the dash of his car and just like screaming when it doesn't start. That's like a classic for me of like things that he does, but overall, I don't know. It was interesting. I feel like the performances themselves did well, but the characters needed a lot of development. You also have the whole thing with Lavinia being this like witch, which is not at all involved in the original text, and it kind of felt unneeded a little bit, in my opinion. I like the idea of her being this cool witchy creature, but it wasn't true to the original text, which kind of bothered me. And it's also the family makeup that's different, because you have in the original text 3 boys, and in the film they decided to make the oldest a girl, which is Lavinia, and I think they only did that so they could have their little love aspects between her and Ward. which I also wasn't that big of a fan of. Overall, it was just needed a little bit more character development, but not in the slow way that they did it. I feel like they could have done things a little bit better and made us care about their characters a little bit more in a way that they didn't fully accomplish within this film.
Yeah, that's sadly very true. And now our final thoughts is something a lot of people have asked the director is the potential for a sequel. The director has definitely expressed interest in doing a trilogy of Lovecraft, and the possibility of this, in my honest opinion, is not gonna happen, since I mentioned before, it did not do well in the box office, and I don't see this as really being a good first film for a trilogy. How about you?
See, I kind of go back and forth. I did like it in the sense of Richard Stanley making a good adaptation of Lovecraft's story, because as I stated before, Lovecraft is a master of surreal and cosmic horror. That can be difficult to bring to screen, but the fact that this really got nothing in the box office does not give me a lot of hope that there's going to be a sequel. I think it could be interesting if there was one, and if there was, I would love to see Nick Cage act in all of them, just for how crazy they would be.
Yeah, and if they did a sequel, what stories do you think should be done next?
So some of the more popular ones that I'm assuming would be done is the Dunwich Horrors and The Shadow Over Innsmouth. Those are the author's most popular, and they're also the ones with the most adaptations. So I'm assuming those are going to be the other two, just because they follow Color Out of Space. I'd be interested to see him do something that isn't overdone.
Yeah, and that is our video for today. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you. This has been fun.
It definitely was, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you're H.P. Lovecraft fans, let us know in the comments what you feel like they could have done better, or a Lovecraft story that hasn't been adapted yet that you would love to see be adapted. As always, thank you for watching. See you guys later, and stay safe.
Hey, hey, here's the play. Blow me